Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in a hadith Qudsi. So a hadith Qudsi is a hadith in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is speaking, but it's in the words of the Prophet ﷺ, in his own words. So that's what makes it different than the Quran. أَنَا عِنْدَ ظَنِّ عَبْدِي بِهِ. I am as my servant or my slave thinks of me. This is a very profound statement. أَنَا عِنْدَ ظَنِّ عَبْدِي بِهِ. I am as my slave thinks of me. This statement can change our lives, because Allah is telling us that He is what we expect from Him. He is as we think of Him. We have to be a people who think positive of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so the theme that I want to speak about today in terms of knowing Allah is one very simple theme that can help a person navigate their entire life and navigate through their storms and through the weather of their life. And that is something called husn al-dhann billah. Husn al-dhann billah means to have a positive opinion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to always expect positive and good from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I want to talk about this concept and talk about what it really means, and then talk about how we can start to really apply this in our lives, and then the effect that it has. I want to give you guys an analogy. I want you guys to imagine that after this talk is over, you go outside and your mom is up, she's pulled in. Maybe she's with you, but imagine that she's not, and that she's actually come and picked you up from outside the lecture. And you get in the car and she starts to drive. And as she's driving, you ask her, because you don't recognize the route that you're taking, you ask her, "Where are we going?" And she says to you, "Just wait, you'll see." Everybody imagine this? How many of you at this point are calling the police because you're so frightened? Is there anyone who's at this point calling the police, calling 911? "I don't know where my mom's taking me. I'm really scared. I think she's gonna hurt me." Anyone? Okay. Why is it that you're not afraid? It's a very simple question. A very simple answer. Trust. You said it in one word. Because you trust your mother. Now, I emphasize to you that you actually don't know where you're going, right? So I want you guys to keep that in mind. You don't know where you're going, but you trust the driver. You trust that your mother is not going to take you somewhere and then leave you there in a ditch. You trust that she's not going to hurt you. And so because of that trust, even when you don't know the route, even if you don't know where this driver is taking you, you have complete trust that she is not going to harm you. You have complete trust that the driver has your best interest in mind. Do you know what that's called? That's called husn al-dhann. That means that, see, many of us, we hopefully have husn al-dhann when it comes to our mothers. We know that our mother has our best interest in mind. We have a good opinion of our mothers. We trust our mothers. And because of that trust, and because of that good opinion, we don't panic even when we don't know where she's taking us. Now, what does that have to do with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Allah takes us in our lives. Allah is the driver of our lives. And yet many of us, when we don't know where He's taking us, we panic. We do that thing where you call the police and say, "I'm scared, I don't know where I'm going." We do that. But maybe we're not calling the police. We're calling our friend, or we're calling our family member, or we're whoever it is that we're calling. But that feeling of panic, that feeling of anxiety, is because we don't have enough trust and a good opinion of the driver. Maybe you've taken turns in your life that you never expected. Maybe you went down routes that you never wanted. But if you have a good opinion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you know that He will never do something to harm you, even when you don't understand the route. I'm going to give you guys a second analogy. Have you guys ever been to the doctor before? Of course you have, right? Everyone's been to the doctor at least some point in their life. When you go to the doctor, imagine that you go to the doctor and the doctor says to you, "Ma'am or sir, you have a very serious illness, and I have to operate. You have to have a surgery. Now, when the doctor tells you this, how many of you in this room are actually surgeons? Exactly, didn't really think so. So, you yourself don't know anything about surgery, right? Is there anyone in here that can do brain surgery? Raise your hand. Okay, so no one in this room knows how to do brain surgery. But when the doctor comes to you and says, I need to operate, I have to do brain surgery on you because you have this illness, what is our response to the doctor? How many of you who have no experience and no knowledge of brain surgery say, actually, you can't operate on me until I understand every single procedure that you're doing? Wouldn't that be a bit arrogant? You know nothing about brain surgery. This person went to school for 12 years and has 12 years experience, and you're saying that you need to understand. You guys following? All right, let's back up. When Allah does stuff in our lives, He's operating on us, yeah? But many of us, we think that we need to understand every single motion that not a surgeon is doing, but God. Is that not arrogance? Is that not arrogance? But God, why? Right? We like that word. Why? And it's almost like, yo, God, you have to explain it to me before you're allowed to do it. That's how we act. Now, I gave you an analogy to show you how completely ridiculous and how completely arrogant it is with a human being. Okay, a human being who actually you could have been a brain surgeon if you studied for 10 years, right? But you can't be God, and I can't be God. And yet we have this type of arrogant attitude with Allah. But Allah, I don't get it, and therefore, I don't approve. You know, it's like, I don't approve, God. I don't approve of your actions. We wouldn't dare say that to a surgeon. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows what He's doing. This is what we have to realize. When you go and you study the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you find that among His names are attributes of knowledge. Al-Alim, Al-Hakim. That Allah is the most knowing. Allah is the most wise. As-Sami', Al-Basir, right? The one who sees everything, the one who hears everything. So we're not talking now about your mother who's limited. We're not talking now about a doctor who's limited. We're talking about someone who's unlimited and who has unlimited knowledge and unlimited ability. And yet we question Him. We question Him and we put ourselves at a level where we think that we need to approve, we need to understand. But see, if I take you back to the analogy of the surgeon, when the surgeon says, this is what needs to happen, what do you say as a patient? You say, do what you need to do, I trust you. You say, do what you need to do, I trust you. And you wouldn't dare say, I have to understand first, because you know that you can't understand. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran, عَسَىٰ أَن تَكْرَهُ شَيْئًا وَهُوَ خَيْرٌ لَكُمْ. It might be that you hate something and it's good for you. Have you guys ever hated something before? Have you guys ever been upset about something that happened in your life? Has it ever happened? Of course it did. Allah's saying it may be that you hate something and it's good for you. How many of you have been upset about something that happened? You didn't get into the school you wanted, you didn't get the program you wanted, you didn't marry the person you wanted, you didn't, whatever it was. How many of you later on down the line found out that this was actually better for you? Has that happened to anyone? So usually, in Allah's mercy, after time, maybe not at that moment, but after time, Allah allows you to see just a little bit of how He saved you. Allah tells us this that indeed it may be that something that you hate is good for you. وَعَسَىٰ أَن تُحِبُّوا شَيْئًا وَهُوَ شَرٌّ لَكُمْ. And it might be that you love something, you really wanted something, but it's actually bad for you. وَاللَّهُ يَعْلَمُ وَأَنْتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. Here is the point. Allah knows and you do not know. This is where we have to come back and humble ourselves and realize who Allah is and who I am.